Hello and welcome to another video. So today we're taking a look at Aggro Swordcraft. This isn't too much of a departure from previous Aggro Swordcraft decks, running the pretty standard 1-drop package, probably the best 1-drop package in the game right now, just because the rotation did kick out a lot of the early rotation cards. So all the 1-drops from Blood, all the 1-drops from Shadow, things like that were quite important to those aggressive decks. The only ones that really got to keep were mostly Sword, with Perseus and Quickblader really rounding out those 1-drops. Then the 2-drop range is actually quite solid, mainly looking to swarm the board without being really countered, so that you can drop things like Bad on 6, or just use them to ping damage as you go up. Similar situation for the 3-drops, they're basically just added damage cards that either ward or put a body on board, both of which can be quite helpful. Then we've got the Storm section, so Albert and Princess Juliet, a couple of ambush, always stuff up the stealth and ambush, basically the same thing, but either way, those are all being ran just so they can combo nicely and get a nice boost as well, especially Vagabond, which can ping 3 damage every turn and be pretty much uncounterable outside of random target removal or AoE damage. Then Round Table Assembly pulls Juliet's alone, so that's 6 damage guaranteed off the round table. And Council of Card Knights, with its Bane, Ward and damage, is just hard for a lot of rotation decks to clear in one turn, so usually you're going to get something out of that. Other than that, we're going to get right into some games and check it out. So first up, we're going to be playing against Haven. Haven's always a fun match when you're versing a sword, just because if you don't kill them in the early game, you are going to get stomped in the mid to late game. So it's very important to be highly aggressive against the Haven decks. We do get a pretty average hand. We do get the Quickblader and Oathless Knight, which are both solid drops, especially Quickblader into Oathless Knight. Just to put 3/1/1s on board on turn 2 is really good. So we get to ping the 1 damage. Pretty much uncounterable from Haven. I don't believe Haven has anything on turn 1 that can actually counter Quickblader's damage. So you're guaranteed to get at least 2 damage in the opener. And Oathless Knight just throws more bodies on board, which is really hard for Haven to counter, especially in the first few turns of the game. Of course, once you do get to turn 6 or so, the AoE damage is going to basically destroy everything, even turn 5 if they are running Ancient Lion. But we can ping heaps of damage here. We're going to get 4 on turn 3. So we've already got, 6 damage turn 3. That's pretty solid, over a fourth of their health. Do get to see the banish though, and a trade. But we are going to get to keep both these 1/1s. We should be able to throw a few more down. And even better, we get Fallen, which is going to ping another 1 damage and put another body on the board. They do all have 1 health, so the only real weakness would be Star Torrent. Everything else I'm probably pretty okay against. And they're almost at half, so getting that quick damage is so important, especially since we can deal 6 in the next turn alone. Snow White going for that evolve, just so they can use that trade there with its Evoed. And they can use Priest to remove 2, so we're only going to be left with 1 card on board this turn, which makes things really difficult. Just makes it really hard to deal with. But Round Table is going to secure us 6 damage plus the Quickblader's damage, which is 7 total. That's going to put them very close to being dead this turn. 4 damage. We're going to be 1 off with Council of Card Knight Evolve. With Juliet though, that is exact lethal as long as they don't counter with a ward or healing. So even with a full board clear here, we should be able to secure a game. Summit Temple, nope, no threat. Now they got nothing left, no wards, that will be lethal. Princess Juliet, 4 damage straight to the face. Damn it, Eris, you just got Eric'd. Even with their good trades here. They're just Princess Juliet out of nowhere. I mean, there was plenty of ways to go for lethal if I draw. I mean, Council of Card Knight's not quite lethal, but basically any other storm damage would have been. How did I miss that, honestly? Okay, that was just dumb. Why did I not play that? Because obviously these matches were played a little bit ago, compared to when I first started them, but that was really dumb, missing that lethal. Worst thing I could possibly do. Yep. Definitely the worst thing I could possibly do. Not that it makes a huge difference, because I mean Juliet's just going to go face next turn anyway, but it definitely opened up a lot of potential for them to heal or ward me out. So don't make misplays, guys, because you will most likely end up punished. I got pretty lucky, honestly, now that I looked at that. I actually can't believe I stuffed that up. Oh, you can flame me in the comments for a terrible, terrible misplay. But it all turned out okay in the end, so that's fine. So after the horrendous end to that last game, our next match is against Portal. Portal is always fun with Sword, just because Portal isn't quite as fast. Portal can swarm, but they definitely don't deal well with a full-on aggro curve into their face. We did get a really abysmal hand though. Lucky our draw was much better. All Storm followers, which is pretty much perfect going into this matchup. Just because dealing with a Quick Blader on 1 just isn't that easy these days. You don't really have those turn 1, turn 2 counters, especially if I'm going first. Which in most cases, that's when Sword will dominate, going first. Although second, they still do okay. That extra evolve can give you the damage you need to close out a game. Unlike the last game where I was just terrible. Anyway. Double Analyzing Artifact into the deck, no real issue to me. You can pretty much completely ignore it and just push this Juliet Storm damage. Pulling off another 3 damage to them. Pretty happy with that. Pretty consistent. If you can get them down to 10 by about turn 4 or 5, usually you can take the game turn 6, turn 7. Which isn't the fastest because you are going to be late, but getting it turn 6 is where you really want to win. So to drop the Vagabond Frog, I can't think of anything Portal has that can easily counter it. I actually can't think of anything outside of Magna, which no one really runs, honestly. At least no decent Portal player tends to run. But we do need to deal with that 4-3, which is just a terrible thing to have to deal with. But I suppose with Round Table we can just out-aggro them instead and just ignore this 4-3. Force them to have to trade into our 2-2s instead. Which actually sets up lethal next turn with Albert, which I don't think I could possibly miss now. As long as we don't see a ward follower, which we aren't going to see because one play point isn't going to be enough to ward up. And they can't deal with this Vagabond because they don't have the random target. I actually think this kind of deck might be a real natural counter to Artifact Portal. Just because we can out-aggro so much quicker than they can do anything. And they can't deal with ambush at all. At least not effectively. And last but not least, we got Shadow as our matchup. Shadow's always fun. I mean, they can be quite aggressive themselves with early game stuff. Not quite as much storm damage, but if they can get to turn 6, turn 7, they can pretty much roll us with Odile and Thanes, which are really hard to deal with as a sword player. But being able to drop the Goblin turn 1, almost as good as a Quick Blader. Almost. Luckily, like I said, most other decks don't have turn 1 plays now. So you can usually ping a few damage. Okay, so Luriel, playing it on 2, really bad personally, just because you don't have any advantage to it. I mean, we can just trade 2 damage into it if we wanted, or we can just all go face for an extra 4, which turn 3 puts them at 14. So you want them around 15, 14, turn 3, at least from all the games that I've played so far. I find that's the kind of line you want to go with. If you can get them down that low, then you can usually keep pushing damage repeatedly over and over and over again. Dealing with this Luriel now because the evolve will come next turn, and I don't want them to get favourable trades. I don't want them to be able to absolutely demolish my board going into the next turn. And I really wasn't worried about the Peacock here. Have all the draws you want, they aren't going to be a big help. This Necrosassin though, really punishing me, killing off my Vagabond Frog. Obviously, Shadow is probably the natural counter to Vagabond and most stealths at the moment, just because it does have a good source of random targeted removal. The only other deck that really can deal with it would be Haven, but they're a little late to deal with it, just because their AoE is so late game. Dragon as well, if they can get to their late game stuff before you kill them. But Dragon is also a more difficult matchup, at least that's what I have found so far playing this deck. So Soulsquasher does end up going for the evolve. They didn't quite have enough to actually deal with this without the evolve. But we only need 6 damage, so we can actually set up a 2-turn lethal. Fallen pings for 1. We can set up the Perseus quite nicely. I actually should have just thrown the bad down and just been, you know, called it quits. Because throwing that bad down would add an extra body to the board that they were forced to remove. Not that they couldn't remove it, it just makes it more of a pain in the ass to remove. But Shadow on turn 6, no ordeal, which wouldn't have helped them anyway. We're going to be able to drop Albert for the 5 damage, go straight to their face, and claim victory. Was a little bit slower than I would have liked it. I would have liked the turn 6 close, but this is just fine. One day I'll get the Altard Albert. One day. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. The deck list, as always, will be in the description below. I did pull this deck from the Shadow Nexus Discord, which is also in the description below. I can't remember who posted it, but I'm sure you can find it there if you go look around a little bit. Other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'll catch you next time. See ya.